This conference will now be recorded.
Morning all. This morning I've got a bit of a heavy topic to discuss. Topic of when God says no. It is a topic worth talking about. God says no in our lives, and it's really normal. And he says no for so many different reasons. And this morning I don't want us to explore why God says no. But I want us to look into how we ought to respond when he says no. One of the most famous occasions in the Bible of God saying no is to the Apostle Paul. And we know in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7, Paul says, "A thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me." This is something that Paul sees that is keeping him from being the man that he wants to be before God. And in verse 8, we see Paul pleading with God. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. Again and again, Paul asks in absolute earnest, only to be answered in verse 9. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Paul pleading with the Lord to be answered, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And how hard an answer to receive, especially when Jesus says things like in Matthew 7, "If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven will give good gifts to those give good things to those who asked him." And Paul, having asked God for what he saw as a good thing to become the man he wanted to be, gets told, "No, my grace is sufficient for you, because my power is made perfect through weakness." What a struggle that would have been. Yet, in 2 Corinthians, we have the whole story. We have what Paul has thought through. We have this whole beautiful picture. And you see, when you put these two side by side, it seems impossible that God could ever say no to something good that we ask. But if you think about it more deeply and look back, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And you know what is an amazing gift? An amazing gift to be given is God's power in our life. That is an amazing gift. That's a gift we do not deserve. That is a gift far greater than God saying yes to everything that we might see as good in our lives. Being able to be a messenger of God's power in weakness is not an easy road to take, but it's an important road to take. And how amazing that is to have God's power displayed through weakness. And we can see this, and we can see how Paul understands this in the start of verse 7, where he says, "So to keep me from being conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn in my flesh was given." And this is Paul explaining why God has said no to him. Paul understands why. He says his why is to keep him from becoming conceited, or to keep him becoming proud, because God has given him these amazing gifts, these revelations. And what else God has given him is the power through his weakness, this thorn in his flesh. And as I said this morning, we don't always know why, but it's really helpful to see Paul understand why and to be able to accept, to be able to trust that God's power is being made perfect in his weakness, and to be able to take it and keep going. And so when God says no, we really have two choices. The first choice is very natural, I think, is to look at it and say, God, you've let me down. I don't know if I can trust you to work in my weakness. Or the second response is to say, Lord, as broken as I am, as devastated as I am, please make your power perfect. I trust you to do it. I trust you to make your perfect power through my weakness. And we can see Paul chooses to trust the Lord still in this weakness. Even as broken as he is, he chooses to trust, to show this perfect power. And I think in Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 8, it's the perfect summary of this. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones." A wise statement if we take this apart a little more. We start with trust in the Lord. Trust in the one that is greater than yourself with all your heart. And then it's followed up with, do not lean on your own understanding. Because our own understanding says, well, I feel like I've been let down. I feel like I've been let down, so therefore I can't trust you. But this is saying, our human wisdom is not God's wisdom. Our thoughts are not his thoughts. We can't lean on our own understanding. We have to trust in the Lord. We have to lean on his, we have to trust in his strength and in his power. And then it's followed by, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. And you see, when God's power is made perfect in our weakness, that's what he wants. He wants to be acknowledged, and he wants to be shown to be a powerful God. So, we may not, in the big picture, see why God is saying no, but God asks us to trust him as our response. And there is a pretty amazing story in the Old Testament. You may or may not know it, but it is pretty moving. And it's a story of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Now, Moses, the leader of the people of Israel at the time, was confronted by Korah. And he came up to him and said, "Who are you to be our leader? How do we even know that God's put you in charge? You know what? We could do just as good a job as you. You've said that you were going to lead us to the land flowing with milk and honey, but you know, all I can see is you've dragged us out of a land that was flowing with milk and honey, and we're in the desert. And all we have to eat is this manna." And Korah, Dathan, and Abiram gathered together a following, 250 people, and they caused dissension throughout the camp. They caused rioting to try and overthrow Moses. And Moses says to Korah, "Let's take it to the Lord. Let him choose a leader between us." And they agree to this test. And the next day, Moses says to the people, "Separate yourselves from those of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." And the people that choose to separate themselves from them come towards and away from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram and towards Moses. And God says, and Moses says, that if an unnatural death comes upon Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, then God was not with them. But if a natural death comes upon them, then God is with them. And from that moment, the people that have chosen to stay there near Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and the people that have chosen to separate themselves stand apart. And the ground opens up and swallows Korah, Dathan, and Abiram and all that are following him nearby, all those that are standing near, just like happens in the Passover. The separation between the people that are trusting in God and the people that are trusting in man. The ground opens up, swallows them, and buries them alive. And then, with this great sign from God, the people turn around and say, "Are you going to kill us all? Moses, how could you do this to us?" And they start taking Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's side and saying, "What have you done? You've taken us out of a land that had flowing with milk and honey, and now you've taken us into the desert when you promised us a land flowing with milk and honey." And God sends a plague among the people. And Moses and Aaron fall before the Lord and pray for the people and make atonement. And throughout this whole story, it's a bit of a devastating story for Israel because there's all this destruction, there's this dissension in the people. But why I've told the story is because it shows the power in Psalm 46. Psalm 46 is written by none other than Korah's sons. Korah's own sons chose to stand apart from their father, and they could write this psalm. God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, and she will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, and the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. You see, the sons of Korah could have been standing there waiting for the ground to open up and swallow them, just like it swallowed the families of Dathan and Abiram. They could have been waiting for the plague that struck Israel to strike them. But through all this, they managed to say, God is our refuge. He is our strength. He is our ever-present help in trouble. They chose to trust God. And you know, just like in what we read in Proverbs 3, they trust in God and then they acknowledge Him. They acknowledge Him by being the pen that says, be still and know that I am God. God will be exalted among the nations. He will be exalted through the earth. They trust and they acknowledge. And in all this time, in their trusting in God, they separate themselves from human understanding, from the human understanding of their own father. But as I'm sure we all thought about with the title When God Says No, there's one more person I'd like to look at of God saying no. And this is to Jesus. We read in Luke 22, and Jesus withdrew from them about a stone's throw. This is the disciples. And he knelt down and prayed, saying, Father, if you are willing, please remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus was pleading with his Father, pleading so much that he was sweating blood. And through this moment of weakness, this time of weakness, just before his death, his crucifixion, Jesus comes to his Father and he pleads. And within the prayer, within the chatting to God, he can come to this conclusion of saying, whatever you choose, I will trust you. I will trust you in my weakness. I don't know about you, but I know for me, it took a lot more than one sentence line to decide that I still trust you, Lord, even in my weakness. But Jesus could say that. Jesus could say he still trusted the Lord in this time of weakness. And we are blessed. We are blessed because we can see God's power that was made perfect in the weakness of a perfect man. And this morning we have come to reflect on Jesus, the Son of God, who is the only man in history that truly trusted in the Lord with all his heart, in all his ways acknowledging him. He did this, he trusted to the point of absolute weakness. And in doing so, we can have no doubt in God's amazing power. We can have no doubt at all. And we can see this coming back to 2 Corinthians. This is in the very next chapter from where we started, in chapter 13. I really recommend if you're ever reading 2 Corinthians 12, read chapter 13 as well at the same time. They're very connected. But in 2 Corinthians 13 we read, "For he was crucified," this being Jesus, "was crucified in weakness, but now lives by the power of God. For we also are weak in him, but in dealing with you, we live with him by the power of God." And this next part is for us this morning, isn't it? Now examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Or do you not realize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless you fail to meet the test? So this morning, I encourage us to examine ourselves. Do we trust God, even in our weakness? Even when he says no? And when you can say, I trust you, God, we pass the test. So do we trust? And I'd like us to conclude as we've gone through this journey of our response to God when he chooses a different path for us. As we've gone through this journey, we've seen this answer to Paul. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. We've seen the weakness of Christ. We've seen the trust in Korah's sons. We've seen the weakness in Paul. And this morning, as we look towards these emblems, we look towards the body and blood of Jesus, I'd like us to think about Hebrews 4:14 to 16. It Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. And isn't this a beautiful circle background to the answer that Paul was given? Paul was given the answer, my grace is sufficient for you. And we're told here in Hebrews, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need. Or should we say, find grace to help us in time of weakness. So as we look at the table before us of a body of blood given up in weakness, let us draw near to the throne of grace so that we may receive the mercy and grace that we need every day to help in our times of need.